Last time, we were in the midst of the discussion that in the interface between the divine and the mundane, between Elokus and the worlds, so the key player is Meichin, the mind. Earlier, he was talking about the concealed mind, the unconscious mind. But as it developed, he went into the conscious mind, because obviously the unconscious mind feeds the conscious mind. That the Meichin, and specifically Chachma within Meichin, is the key interface. Meaning that Chachma is the place where that controls and trains and disciplines the lower levels. So what is represented by the Eilumus, the Yesh of the Eilumus, is Midas. In other words, before he talks about the refinement of the world at large, which he'll discuss later, he's talking about the refinement of the world within us. What's the world within us, so to speak, world as opposed to godliness? It's our yeshus, it's our sense of self, our ego, our consciousness, sense of that I am the center of the world, which in the language of psychological language is midas. It's the emotions of a human being, the feelings, our impulses, which is really primarily about what I feel. I love, I hate, I like, I don't like. So midas, basically emotions uncontrolled, untamed, would essentially create a jungle, would create anarchy. Everybody does whatever they want. It's the mind, the Meich Shalat Al Alev, the mind that controls, that disciplines and trains the heart. So in our own personal world, what is the interface between what God wants and us, the untamed you? It's the mind that carries the message. In other words, this is what you're supposed to do, and then slowly it changes. So the Maimorim before, he discussed at length the three stages of Ibur, Yunik, and Meichin, the three stages of maturity, the maturity process, how the mind grows, and in the process also the midas the emotions become tamed. And the last chapters that we learned from last week, it talks about how the dynamics of exactly how the mind actually works. So of course we're also talking about the contrast that in Tohu, in the world of chaos, and to tell you all this is misaligned. So there's chaos, there's no control at all. The mind does not control the heart, and therefore all the energies just destroy each other. But if you remember, he discussed the two aspects to it. One is that they don't leave room for each other. There's not sevel. So everyone is completely intense in whatever their feeling may be. And the second aspect is that they don't give and take from each other. So in contrast to that, in Tikkun, in the world of Tikkun, of repair, the Meichin, what does the mind do to the emotions? Also these two things. The first thing is, it weakens them, chalishus hamidus as he calls it. It weakens the emotions, that their yeshes, their intensity of their me, gets weaker. So it's not like it is in Tohu, complete intensity. And because they get weaker, they're able to start tolerating each other. Because when it's all me, think of it like two people who are completely selfish or narcissistic. No way they can speak to each other. But once you weaken their intensity, say, you know what, maybe you're not completely right. So each one hears that, so there's a weakening of the midas. So the midas, be'etzem, essentially they're not changed. But they've been weakened in intensity, therefore there's a room for now tolerating each other. So in the first chapter, in 259, he explained that is the tolerating of each other. Remember, this is all inside the energy, the not the kelim yet. We'll get to that. They tolerate each other, which means essentially that chesed tolerates gvura. And then he began to explain that it's not really the complete transformation, complete training of the emotions. However, he says, but ktsas hiskalilus it is. What does that mean? That there is some form of interconnectivity. Hiskalilus is that they work with each other. Real hiskalilus, as we'll learn in the next stages, is complete symbiosis and complete like a mosaic. Or think of it like the colors on a painting. Fusion. The fusion and integration of all of them. But in stage one, where the midas are weakened, the emotions are weakened, there is what he says, it's not the complete, but nevertheless, the fact that they leave room for each other is already gamken eze hiskalilus. That's what he calls it. It's some form of hiskalilus, and he explains briefly that in chapter 259 Reish Nun Tes, on page Tov Kuf Chafei, which is 525. It explains what is the hiskalilus. An example, I'm just using one of many. That, for example, a person who wants to have life, wants to live, that's chesed, wanting something. It includes an element of not wanting the opposite of life, which is gvura. So you can't call it hiskalilus as we'll learn in the next chapter, but there is an element of two features going on in anything that you, in other words, anything that you desire. Chesed is desire. Chesed is like wanting something. Chesed is a forward force. Gvura is a disciplinary force. It's like the yes and the no of something. Yeah, avin yira, love and awe, and so on. So therefore, wanting something includes also not wanting the opposite. Whereas, for example, in Tayu, if you remember, they're self-destructive. They don't really care. They don't really care. Because everyone is only into themselves. So that's chapter 259. 260, he goes on, and in truth, that's not really yet hiskalilus. It's tolerance of each other. So there's already some working together, some cooperation, because there's tolerance, but it's not what's the complete cooperation. And remember, this is all stages in the refinement of the yesh of the person. So it's actually stages in how you take a complete self-interest driven, self-centered person and driven by midas and then slowly sublimate it. So stage 2 in the 260 is that real hiskalilus. And here he gives a whole bunch of series of examples. The classic example, of course, is when you discipline your child out of love. So here he calls it chesed shebegvura. So even when it's gvura, there's discipline and apparently doesn't look to the naked eye. It looks like it's a gvura. Truth is it's chesed. It's really love, but the only way to love to really be mature and proper, like when we say Avram sheyotzim mimenu Yishmael. Yishmael, the son of Avram, is also chesed, but it was untamed chesed. It was lacking Yitzchak, which was gvura. So the goal is that there should be a discipline. So there needs to be a hiskalilus. Like rain is a good example. He doesn't use the example, but gvura, it's called gvura's gshamim, which is the gvura of rain. Why is it gvura? Geshem is chesed. It's water. It's this ashpah. It's transmission. Because if it comes down not in raindrops, it becomes worse than gvura. It's destructive. You know, the famous Gemara where Menachem Ish Gamzu, when he prayed for the rain, then he had to pray again that the rain should come down in raindrops because Reiv Teva Eini Michael Mekabel. Too much good, if it's unchanneled, it's not channeled and not harnessed. So basically, this is really hiskalilus. So when you look at a raindrop, is it chesed or gvura? It's both. It's chesed in channeled by gvura. Or when a good teacher communicates, it's not just chesed, it's gvura that is, it's like the brakes to the gas. A car without brakes is dangerous. So you need to have both. And that's chapter 260 where this, so in other words, the meichin now have and the key here is that this already introduces the kelim. The tolerating of one another, if you remember in Teyu, the two problems that he spoke about, Zen Nene, the two opinions there. One is the opinion of the Tanakama, the opinion that midas daim is only when you deprive someone, even though you lose nothing. That is not necessarily midas daim. So there he explained that in Teyu the problem is that's that mitzad the energies. The energies don't tolerate each other. But the kelim, the problem in Teyu, but in Teyu there is the concept of transmission of energy. However, only in a way that the other does not have any benefit from it. We learned that earlier. He said the kelim in Teyu, on the other hand, is nothing, doesn't exist, because kelim, by definition, containers means there's a mashpia makabel, and in Teyu there's no such thing as giving and taking from each other. That's daim, and that's what the Yashemrim says. That's Teyu. Even if one diminished a bit, the fact that you don't want to give to another, like a teacher doesn't want to give because he may be diminished, chosek tzas is already daim. What's the tikkun of it? So the tikkun, the repair of Teyu and the energy is what we just talked about, is the tolerance, that the midas tolerate each other. And the repair of the kelim of Teyu is through the kelim of tikkun, where now it's more than just tolerance. They actually work with each other. And that's the kelim of tikkun. So the energy of tikkun alone only creates the ability of tolerating one another. It's where the kelim come into play. In simple English, it means that until you don't have real containers, I'm just thinking of an example. Yeah, you can have an example here. A teacher is teaching a student. So he can be teaching him with chesed and gvura. He's tolerating another entity, he's teaching him, but he's not really creating container in the student. It's like he's giving it to him, but he's not really training him in a way that he can stand on his own. Once there's Eris and Kalim, you're talking about a real relationship now. There's a give and a take and so on. So the Kalim is what allows more than just tolerance. It creates the true hiskalilus, the true interconnectivity, I guess. And that's how the world actually works. Our world, for example, look at nature, look at the human body. You see that type of constantly working with each other. And that itself, we're going to say another level. But there's the real hiskalilus. So this comes inside the Kalim. So basically, as you said on page Tov Kuf Chav Ches, which I think is an excellent summary, he says, so therefore Chachma has two things in it. I'm just pointing out. Middle, like a third way down. Nimtze, the pulas ha-meichen ba-midas is shnei dvarim. I'm just summing it up. So we find from this that the effect of meichen, of mind, on the midas, on the emotions, is in two things. One, that the mind creates a weakness in the er ha-midas, and that creates a that allows two opposites to tolerate each other. And that happens without hisaskus. Remember, that's without education. Because that was, if you recall, that came because of the Eid Ein Sof, the divine energy that rests in Chacham, it's in Bittul. So the midas, emotions feel that Bittul. So Meichen doesn't have to work. This is a natural progression of maturity. That's Chacham. That comes from the Eid Ein Sof that he discussed in chapter, much earlier, in chapter Reish Nuches, that whole discussion that we had last week about what really weakens the midas. If I bring in also, we discussed that. What really weakens the midas? So the answer is, it's not the mind itself, it's the elikus in the mind. So that's stage one. Ayin Beis, I'm back to Tov Kuf Chav Ches, this is 528. Hiskalilus hamidus, shekol midah klula, and this is through hisaskus. So this is unbelievable what he's saying here. He's saying like this, is that the mind does two things in this interface. The first thing, it weakens everybody. It's like when the mind comes into play and there's, let's say, think of it like this. Think of two parties that can't get along. They're just fighting. Comes an arbitrator or a mediator and sits down and says, listen, first thing is, no more yelling now. Everyone's going to speak. Obviously that doesn't mean they suddenly get along. But right now, we're going to hear everyone, when he speaks, you don't speak. When you just have to create a state of peace. So it's hardly hiskalilus, but at least it's better than it was the day before, where they was just yelling and they don't talk to each other. So you have the first thing. So that's like the mind. The mind is like telling the mid, listen, calm down. Weakens the mid, the emotion.
In order to be able to do that, you have to be a greater.
Exactly, because you're not doing that through training them.
Exactly, just by being there.
So why does mind have that power? So the answer is not because the mind is so powerful, it's because the mind is a bottle. It's like almost like the two parties accept this media because they realize he knows something that they don't know. He knows, let's say he knows the Das Torah, a Rebbe, whatever. They both are, it's like bottle, not because they changed, but they're ready to accept something. It's like when you sign arbitration agreement that you're gonna accept. That generally speaking, it's a certain bittul. It's hard. It's not a birur. They didn't change. They just accept. But that sets the stage that they speak to each other, and that sets the stage that next step will be that now the meichen can actually train them. This is the beauty here, and that's bina, not chachma. You see, so chachma weakens the resistance through its bittul. And Bina comes in and then he says, they should actually begin to talk to each other and really appreciate each other, that they need each other. This is really the mind working with them. So in other words, the first thing you need is mashmas. You need you need to accept the authority. You need to accept that there's something not you. And once you accept that, that's fertile ground. That then comes a saskus. The mind can actually start explaining to each one. He brings back l'chalikul efad. Remember the point with Meichen, that Meichen brings everything into details, and that's why it's flexible. Midas does not. Midas is just his feeling. So Meichen now, especially Bina, he says here, that it breaks it down and it explains. It trains each midah. Listen, you'll need each other. Chesed, you're not complete without gvura. Gvura, you're not complete without chesed. That type of thing. So it's more than just the weakening of them. But But then he says, "V'zeh shaykh only la'achach lishas hamida b'chlal." But you can't train them until you first weaken them. Weaken their intensity, that is. Then you can break it down, and chesed suddenly feels, because as long as the light is shining of chesed completely, it's completely consumed himself, he sees no reason for need for gvura. Again, even to his own detriment. Even if it will help him, because he's completely consumed by himself. The fact that he's weakened allows that room. And then he says, so that's a summary of that chapter, 260, where he brings together. So now we have two things we added now. The second stage, not just weakening, but hiskalilus, and that comes through bina, after you have the first. And then comes, and that's all the kalim. Now already the kalim are involved. So you already have the tikkun, the repair of the kalim that in Toyu completely did not were mashpiyah makabel. Now, so in Toyu had both problems also. There was no chlishus, there was all intensity, and there was no working together. Here, both things happen. Now, page...
The stage you were just giving with the two effects of
Meichen. Mind.
There was already you're talking it with kalim or without kalim?
The second one is kalim, the first one's not. Basically, the first one is the energy. The weakening is energy. It's like the two people come in the room. You're not working with them. There's no kalim really.
So why wouldn't that happen with the midas of Teo? Because we're not talking.
No,
the only thing that was lacking is a good kalim. We're not talking kalim with the first part. So why wouldn't that?
Well, no, but they're interdependent. If the intensity of the air is so intense.
They were both intense. Both. You were starting off with two sets of...
But two types of intensity, right. But by Teo, basically what he said was that the intensity of the eris, of the energy is so intense that they don't leave room for anyone. There's no room for anyone else except themselves. Remember the whole thing with Raymond was...
So
that's eris the Teo.
So at this point, you're starting with weaker eros.
Hold on one second. The repair of that is the weakening of the intensity. That's an energy level.
Okay, that's later on, but
that's like the example, like these two people who were arguing, couldn't get along. So they're just sitting in a room.
All the different
that's iris. That's iris. All the iris.
Okay, fine.
All the iris.
Fine. So why doesn't that part work on the ones that become eventually we call iris the tail? Why that part should work on all iris, because you're not involving a kalim. At that, so the only different point is the kali. The only different part. For both sets.
But in Toyu, I'm not sure what you're saying. In Toyu, the energy is so intense, they just don't tolerate each other.
Midas are different. When you started with different midas. You're starting with weaker midas.
That's in Tikkun, the weaker midas, not in Toyu.
Okay, so we're starting with weakened, to begin with, weaker midas.
Right.
Okay, so they're not all the same, the midas, that just happen to go into Toyu.
In Toyu, the midas are not weaker. They're intense, so there's no training on it. They're just...
Fine, so you can't do it. So they're stronger in Toyu. The chatil of the midas.
Intenser, yeah.
Talking about two different things. Fine.
The Toyu and Tikkun are two opposite worlds.
Fine. The midas to begin with, that become in Tikkun eventually,
are
weaker to begin with.
Absolutely.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No way to know that. Okay. And that's not explained.
Well, that's in Tikkun, the mind weakens those midas. Why the midas? Why are they weaker?
Fine. So the midas is starting off equally midas.
But it sounds like he has a good question. There's a whole different makeup.
He's saying something.
Before one second. Go ahead. Yeah.
There's a whole different makeup of the spheres of Tikkun than there is in Terku. I mean, we've changed. We've permitted his kalvos. Shane came in higher than Tikkun. There isn't such a thing. There's obviously a change in the mahus of the sphere. It's not that this.
But that's why talking now. That's why I specifically gave an example. Toyu and Tikkun exist right now too. They exist in every state. I gave an example. Two people who cannot get along, they're fighting with each other. Like the students of Rabbi Akiva. And let's say their fight comes because of holiness. Each one is convinced he's absolutely right, doesn't have room for anybody else. No respect for you. That's a state of Toyu that exists right now too. Then there's another state. Those same two people two things could happen. They could destroy each other, which is what happened in the Spirus Eimer, in the days of Eimer. That they died because they killed each other, basically. They destroyed each other. Or what could happen is, a tikkun can happen. Another state, where these two come together, and they sense in some way the bittul of chachma, of elikus, and they begin to communicate. So that's the state of tikkun.
No, my question was, they started
So
with
it's
different
not-
raw material.
No, it's the same people.
It just happened that one
And that didn't happen. It's another state that God put into hiskalilus, another state that things don't have to self-destroy. You could submit yourself. Yeah.
State of consciousness.
So what is different between one tail and the other?
The difference is a new energy enters into reality in tikkun.
Fine.
That energy is called
It only
elok.
affects, and why does it only affect certain auras, the ones that...
It doesn't affect. It affects those.
all the auras.
In the example I gave, it affects those that wanted to let it affect.
Fine, so they're
So
different.
Tayu is an archetype.
That's what he's trying to
They're
say.
different. They start
No, but you understand?
One's
hiskalilus.
choosing one thing, one's choosing another thing.
One second.
How come one chooses one thing and one chooses another?
One second.
How
Why?
come-
Why is one second?
Some
Why?
parts of Tehu go into Tikkun and some parts of Tehu
Right.
don't go into Tikkun.
Hold on. Who said that? Who said that exactly?
No, some parts
Hey,
of-
what's that? You just threw a line
No,
in.
that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying.
Some parts of iris go into tikkun.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
No, everything in Tayu goes into tikkun, but it's in diminished state.
Everything. In tikkun
Everything.
goes into tikkun.
Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, everything goes into tikkun.
But it's not.
It's diminished.
It's not,
what is it- what is-
Technically, it begins because it's farther from the source. So Tayu is closer to the source, so the intensity is more.
Okay, so it starts off with different material.
Hold on a second. But no, it's not that way. First of all, there's no starting. It's two archetypes. It's two stages, you can say. Think of it as two stages in creation. There's one stage. In truth is it's concurrent. Yeah, because there's no such one after the other. In Ruchni, spiritual, everything is concurrent. It just cause and effect. Think of it like the stage where the little children will fight with each other and they'll grow a little older. They'll work with each other. So that's in our world. It's time. It takes time for that to happen. In Ruchnis, it all happened simultaneously. It all happened in two stages. So you're asking what causes the midas in tikkun to get weaker. It's not automatic.
Midas are making a choice. There's some midas we're all...
No. They're not making a choice because remember, these are worlds that don't have choices. These are worlds that God created.
Fine.
So one second. There's a natural gradation
Fine.
that happens.
So
Let me ask you a question.
God created two...
I want to ask you a question. How do you understand that Er Lifnei Tzimtzum is boundless? After the Tzimtzum, the Er is limited. How do you, ask the same question. No, ask the same question. The answer is it's two states in reality. And it's two stages. The Tzimtzum is the ultimate effect that allows the unlimited light to become somewhat, to allow room for something else. That's on a higher level. Tayu and Tikkun are similarly two stages, two states, two archetypes, you can call it.
But they're not be'erach. It's not just more intensity, less
I know the word be'erach is the right word here because they definitely feed one another. Let's put it this way: the state, the world of Tayu is the same two spheres don't get along. In the world of Tikkun, they get along. Why?
After the processes that you
That's
mentioned.
They're right, and that process is called Chachma and Moichin.
And before the processes...
Without Chachma, take out Chachma and Moichin. Listen, there's Moichin also.
Why is
One second, you can ask this question. Maybe this is what you mean to say. Why doesn't Moichin of Tayu affect the midas of Tayu?
That's the question.
That is your question.
Yeah.
That's a whole, I didn't hear that at all in the last 10 minutes.
It takes
by
a
the way.
long time to figure out
Okay,
the doctor.
fine. If that's the question, the answer is because the intensity of the midas are so intense, they can't hear the moichin of Tayu.
Okay, so you're starting with stronger iris. That was one of the answers.
He said parenthetically. He
Is there a
said
different quality of ore?
Yeah, he says in Echos, it's not just more. It's
It's a different quality of ore.
it's more intense.
That's all. You're not starting with the same things then. Okay, fine.
No, I can't agree with that last statement. That's not correct.
Quantitatively.
You're not starting because not because of some around. Because then what do you need this whole Aveda for? Well, you're basically saying it's fatalistic.
Okay, fine.
It's not fatalistic.
So then explain it to me.
No.
And I'm back
He's trying to say that. So what's the whole explanation of the training?
That's what I want to know. What's the difference?
Why? To me, if you can't understand it down here, you're not going to understand it up there. You're trying to understand it up there before you understand it down here. Can we talk about it down on Earth?
So down earth, maybe.
One second. No. What's going on here is this. I'm not saying this to be critical, but this is when you learn Chassidus, you have to first understand it down here before you understand it up there, because you get stuck in an abstract place and you get into this conundrum. Because basically, what you're saying is,
But he's up there, he's not down here.
no. Well, we're going to force him down here.
Get him down.
But you have to understand the question.
Hold on. No. I understand the question perfectly, but let me just tell you one thing.
Understand?
No.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. The suggestion here is that even before any Aveda, there's no choice. Tayu must break because they're just intense and it's fatalistic. And in Tikkun, they start with the playing field is different, which basically negates those whole these Mamorim. There's no process then. There's no Aveda. You can't. Where's the interface of training? The answer is the following. It must come down here. Tayu and Tikkun are just archetypes for what's down here. He began, if you remember the whole discussion, he didn't begin with Tayu and Tikkun alone. He began, but then when he applied it, he said the Maimer Chazal, that a person should always be flexible like a reed and not inflexible like a cedar. And he explained that these are two ways of being that inside each of us. So we have a Tayu within us and we have a Tikkun within us. And there's absolutely not fatalistic. There are choices. So we have and he explained it even better. As there's a stage, when a 1-year-old has a tantrum, they have no choice. So you can't judge them. That's the Tayu that we all began with. But that Tayu is not going to remain that way forever. As the child grows, there's going to be a natural maturity, even without any Aveda, that the child's midas are going to get weaker and their mind's going to get stronger. And that's Tikkun. So, yes, to say Tayu, you can say, 1-year-old doesn't have a choice, but the one will become a 10-year-old. Tikkun is the 10-year-old or the 20-year-old. And Tayu is the 1-year-old. Then you understand that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then now apply it to above.
Okay.
The way God created... Well, no, listen, Bechira is no, but let's not use the word Bechira, man. God created hiskalilus. He created us maturity. Hiskalilus is us maturing. Okay. Tayu and Tikkun is don't use them worlds. They're basically two cosmic states of a cosmic child and a cosmic adult. Call it that. Then you don't have the... So of course there's two stages. Yeah, when that stage of Tayu is but they work together. If it ended after Tayu, it'd be all, That's how. Now, you see what I'm saying?
So say that
No, by the way, it's an excellent question, and it's important we spelled it out. Because it's true. When you think about it on own, you say, Tayu had no choice. They had to break the Caleb. So then if Tayu didn't have a choice, who says we have a choice when it comes to like the Chet? You talk about Neir Alila all the time. But it's not so simple. Now, in truth, Tayu is think of Tayu as really the mechanics. Tayu is not a live child, obviously. So it doesn't play itself out until in our... But you have to remember, Tayu and Tikkun are not there. They are us. A child is Tayu incarnate. Simple as that. What else? Another example of Tayu incarnate is the chaos of this world, the fragmentation, that no one knows their purpose. You're born, it's the same idea. You're a child, you're born into a world, you have no idea the purpose of anything. It's basically a result of the Shviras HaKelim. Let's say every one of us is allocated 1,000 sparks to elevate in our lifetime. 10,000 sparks. Where are your sparks? You have no idea. God leads you here, God leads you there. You eat a piece of food. I mean, that's the whole idea, that you're refining the sparks that scattered from the breaking of the containers. So Tayu is right here. This world is the chaos of this world, the darkness of this world, the lack of order, the lack of discipline is Tayu as it plays itself out in our life. Now, of course, if you want to abstract it and get straight to talk about the level, you can. But you can't apply. But you start asking questions only on the level without understanding how it plays itself out. Then you can get stuck in this place where, like in truth is, we can't really even conceive of a world of Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum without a Tzimtzum. It's all part of one reality now, because we wouldn't be existing to talk about it if there was no Tzimtzum. So when we talk about Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum, we're also talking because we are able to talk about something. You see what I'm saying? It's all, but we talk about it as if it's like beyond us. I mean, it's complicated when you really the dynamics of it. You see, this is the part that you have to spell out, because when you learn it, it's easy to just get stuck in the level.
Simple. The process of maturing is driven by what? Changes in the quality of the light, changes in the quality.
So excellent. The way he puts it, the way it seems, is that there's two aspects to maturing. One happens automatically without. I understand your question, but let me say that happens without any effort. That's without hisaskus. You keep saying that. It just, like he says earlier, the midas just by nature, just like a tree grows.
But in your example of the Rav, it's because of the quality of the teacher.
No. That's the second level where there is actual effort. So let's put it this way. Every child will grow up by nature.
The media comes in the room and just says, hey, guys, just sit down and be quiet. So there's a quality to that they accept.
Yeah, that's a natural process that will happen
So
for every person.
Quality.
That's our quality for sure, because you see, they don't understand it. It's not like they're submitting. The word is, if you remember, it was more. We learned that night. It's more that it's almost balkarch. It's not forced, but it's also not bislapshus. It's not explaining it. Like someone will say, "Why do you have to?" Someone says, "Why are you sitting down submitting? You were right. You know why should you do it? You know what every balmach like this will say." You know why you're sitting down? And you'll say, I'm sitting down because I realize that enough is enough, we can't fight forever. And we have to make some peace here. I mean, that's not a seichelic answer, but it's also not it's not forcing. It's not something the melech forces you, like we said, Rotzen would be a command, you guys sit down, which of course wouldn't really work. It would be the chlal imposed. And then once they sit down, and there's that type of acceptance, then even maybe they may not have meant it. It could stop right there. If you stop right there, they may even submit to a mediation, but it will not be sustainable because they didn't. That's the interface. It didn't become theirs. Then comes stage 2. Now let's train you. Let's teach you that you really need each other. At the end of the day, the goal would be that not only are they not enemies and tolerate each other, not only do they tolerate each other, not enemies, they actually become friends.
So then there's a change.
And they support each other.
There's a change in the quality of the kalim and the or.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't recall right here that he talks about how the keli speaks back to the
Not yet.
Not yet. But definitely the kalim, there's no question that the kalim of tikkun for sure make the errors of tikkun much. Because then it's a workable system.
So we had spheres for kalim. I mean, at that point, why didn't, this was before any education, before anything, why didn't all the iris go down and break up and explode before this process started? There was none before. There's always
no. The first
more auras being created. Is that the thing? Or, I mean, when it goes, why don't all of them go at that point?
No, first of all, you have to remember that even in Tayu, it's not that everything breaks the same way. If you remember, I mentioned, it doesn't say it here, but in other places, the real shvira was in the midas. The shvira in the meichen is that they had no control over the situation. But remember, the midas, like he says here, midas is yesh. Even meichen the Tayu has more bittul than the midas of Tayu, relatively speaking. However, they're not power. They're very intense. They don't have enough power to do anything with the midas because the midas are too intense. So generally speaking, you say the shvira happens in the zayin tachtonis. In other words, chesed down in the Tayu.
Obviously, yeah.
So the meichen do not have a complete break, but they're also lost now because they don't have a place. There's no functionality in Tayu.
So what's left though?
Remember, we're talking again. You're dissecting Tayu as opposed to tikkun.
Tayu, why are they all gone?
What do you mean by gone? They always.
They all crash downstairs. They go down to the.
But they don't all go down really crash.
Why don't they all go down?
Because, like I said, the mind remains hovering because it never really broke. The mind has like no place to rest, so to speak. So you're asking. This is it's very fair questions. It's not really the scope. No. But it's going a little further. Now you're going into another thing. What happened? What's the relationship?
Part of the question.
You remember there was that parentheses where he spoke about how tikkun is yerish, inherits the energies of tayu. Remember, he said two things: that there's the energies of tikkun that are on their own, and there's how they inherit. You don't remember that?
I was here, I don't remember.
No, it was definitely. It was like you even asked me the question because it was. I know exactly.
That I asked him to say so.
You asked me what is the meaning. Remember, there was a disagreement of the two. I'll show it to you right away. 1 second. Page 521. Beginning of 520, he says, look at the bottom. This is exactly what we're talking about. Let me read it, since there's two things in the light, in the energy of tikkun. One is they're eres miyuchadim, They're absolutely unique and distinct from Eretz Teyu. They're not the evolution of Eretz Teyu. In other words, they're not just diminished Teru, they have a different quality completely.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
Okay.
How's that?
The second one.
Then Vehein Eretz the Tikkun Betzim. They're Eretz the Tikkun Betzim. Ve'eretz Elohim l'gab atzmas haim kamei or l'gab
Okay,
atzim.
fine. You're studying two different sets of stuff. Okay.
But it's not fatalistic, remember that.
Okay.
Va'beiju ma shenimshach me'eretz the Teyu, that kasher nistaknu ha'kelim the Tikkun, that when the kelim of Tikkun were repaired, chazu, the energies of Teyu returned. Like he says in Eschheim, and then he goes on and explains this whole thing. That's where the Teyu became the Tikkun, the Asad and so on and so forth.
Two different stuff. Two steps. 521.
Let me put it to you this way, just to confuse you a little, okay, if I may, and myself. When an adult grows from a child, that we're talking that the child is more like Eretz the Teyu, kosher ka'aretz, and an adult is more tikkun, because the meichen and the midas. Is the adult just a diminished child, or is there something new that enters into a person as they grow into an adult? And the answer is both. That's what he's saying in our language. In other words, it's not just that a child is intense midas and then weaken them, you suddenly become an adult. We all know that it's more than that. There's something that adulthood is not just a weakish child. Adulthood is that there's a new level that enters, and that level does not come from the intensity of the midas of the child. That's a level that's really shema, as he's explaining. That's the bittul of Elikuz that Tikkun feels that Teyu does not feel. It's almost like the Kavana El Yena, the higher purpose of it all. Tikkun ultimately senses, and Teyu doesn't. So Tikkun may be lower, but it knows the Kavana, and Teyu doesn't. That's what the dynamics of that plays itself out how Meichen trained the Midas. So it's really a combination of both elements. In other words, if we were fundamentally animals, it doesn't matter how old you grow. You don't suddenly become mature. The fact is we do have potential. That 1-year-old has a potential that will later emerge of being batel telikus. But the child is too young to do it. But there's a process how it happens. It's not just, that's why I'm saying it's not fatalistic. It's not just, it just happens. There is a work of the training, how the mind trains the midas to do that. You follow what I said? In other words, every human being is fundamentally different than an animal. Because animals is also teyu. Not really. The midas of the animals are like teyu, because they do work with each other. It's a different story. But the midas, if we were like animals, it's teyu. But a human being has shema, not a behemoth. So you know what the Friedrich Rebbe said, that a behemoth never saw heaven. We walk upright, and behemoth walks down. That's just a physiological difference because spiritually we're different. We look up to heaven, sumar menechem, and we curious what's going on there. Animals are not curious of anything about beyond themselves. They're not looking to fly to the moon. They don't build better homes. They don't have that angst. They don't have that curiosity. No, so when does that develop in an adult, in a child? A 1-year-old also doesn't have that curiosity. I mean, on a small scale, but not. So a human being, when you're born, you already have shema. You already have tzelem elikim. But like it says in Shulchan Aruch, the nefesh elikim comes out in stages. By bris is one stage, by bar mitzvah is another stage. When you're 20, another. But that doesn't. But you're born differently. It's not like when we're born we're all equal. We're all like animals, and then something. That's what he's saying. So therefore, we are fundamentally different. Tikkun is fundamentally different than Tayu, but then there's a process that Tikkun repairs Tayu. So it's not just two worlds. It may be part of the interface as well. Now that I think about it, in other words, it's not just you grow into an adult. You're actually repairing that which was before in disrepair, the chaos of Tayu. But you definitely have something new. Ultimately, it comes down to the Meichen Chachma of Atzilus, has the Shema of Atzilus, has the Bittul of Elikus, that in Tayu just simply was not able to emerge. And Tikkun it emerges. That's what it comes down to.
Utilizing the child within.
Yeah, you could say that.
As an adult.
I was using the child here in the untamed element. Then there's a child mitzad the tmimus of Amunah Pshuta that has more bit, but that's a different twist. Okay. Wow. Yeah. One second. Okay, so the summary of chapter 260 is where we just discussed. So basically, we added now. There's the two meichen does two things. So there's one thing that weakens it. That's the energy, the air. It weakens it, not through itself, without effort, because that's through the bittul, that's through the subjugation, the sense of awe and humility that there's a divine that's within Chachma. And the second is through Bina primarily, the understanding, comprehension that you actually the mind trains the midas. Like the parents training a child, educating a child, not just listen and be weak. In other words, don't just follow whatever you want to do, but actually start training, and slowly those midas will become trained to be able to work with each other and hiskalilus. They can coexist with each other. And he said that's Matzadik Kelim. I'll just read again at the bottom of page 528. I'm just reading select lines here and there. This comes through the Kelim becoming expanded, which is specifically in Tikkun. And he says this is the difference between Katnus HaMeichen and Legadlus HaMeichen, between immature mind and a mature mind. What he calls Katnus, a small mind and an expansive mind. The Katnus HaMeichen is called B'chinas Klolus. Small intellect is you just take things in a very general sense. But when you develop, you mature, you begin to think in detail. So he says like a child. Because his mind is small, he just sees things in general. And that's why his midas, his emotions are so intense. And only in one kav. Like a child, when he's happy, he's happy. When he's sad, he's sad. There's no sophistication, there's no subtlety. By a gadol, on the other hand, because his kalim became bigger, actually, he does say how the kalim affect the air here. Because the kalim become expanded, and he takes details, he's able to tolerate details. That's why his midas are also come in all kinds of kavim shenim, in all different ways. Chesed, gura, and so on. And that's the difference between Teyu and Tikkun. I'm just summing up to 260, the bottom of page 528. That the Tikkun of kalim, the Tikkun, this is the difference between Teyu the Tikkun. That Kalim the Teyu, the Kalim of Teyu are small Kalim, and therefore, so in addition to the fact that they're a general energy, there's no room for anyone else, also the Kalim were too small, and therefore they don't tolerate each other. They don't give and take from each other. But Tikkun, the Kalim become wide and expansive, so they can accept all the details, and that's how the hiskalilus of the spheres. Okay. Now the summary of 261 is...
I just want to say something. It's 3 stages in hiskalilus that is saying.
Yeah, the Eze hiskalilus, which is from the weakening...
First Eze hiskalilus, which is basically...
The weakening.
Yeah,
exactly.
They give space to each other.
Exactly.
The next that was chapter 259.
Right. 260
is the next second stage in hiskalilus, which is not only Nesim Mokim Zelozeh, they're actually being together in the same case.
And they realize, they also realize they need, right.
They're to some extent working together.
The very big extent.
Yeah, big extent, but not mamish working together yet. And the next one, it will be actually working together. 3 stages in hiskalilus.
There's a fourth. They become one in 262, which we'll learn.
Right. So it's exactly.
You could say.
And it's fascinating.
2 and 3.
I'll tell you in a second. But it's fascinating.
I'm going to say now the summary of 2 and 3. I'm going to say
choice of words. Some hiskalilus, beginning of hiskalilus, actual hiskalilus, and perfect hiskalilus.
Hold on. He doesn't say the beginning of hiskalilus. He doesn't say that word.
He says, I'll tell you.
I'll be more precise.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
He does call it hiskalilus already.
Yes.
One second. In truth, it's like this. In truth, it's like this.
That we spoke about tolerance, integration, and unity.
You're correct. That's correct. The 2 and 3, I would really say it's 2 separate chapters, and but it's closer to each other than
but look how he starts the chapter. Ikara hiskalilus is the next one.
Yeah.
So 3 and 2, there's a difference between 2 and 3, obviously. Big difference.
Read the Kitzur, the first line of the Kitzur, right before that. No. Right before Reish Samachalef. Read the Kitzur. Inyan hiskalilus.
Yeah.
So there's Inyan hiskalilus and Ikara hiskalilus.
Exactly. It's a very precise choice of words.
Okay. Let me just say, in the way I would put it, is the following. The one that's tolerating we got. That's why I'm using the example. You got the two people in the room, they're tolerating each other. Fine. They're listening. Or they're beginning to listen. But that doesn't mean. The then comes, but you see, that's Oiris alone. That's the Oiris. The Kalim add the dimension where they actually begin to see that they can work with each other. And they need each other. Like I said, he gave a whole bunch of examples. Chesed is not complete without Gvura. Gvura is not complete without Chesed. We got that? That's chapter 260. So that means there is hiskalilus. Okay. But that, you could say, the way the Lashon, the language from it, it seems that hiskalilus, it seems, is Eris within Kalim. Now, in Perik 261, he says that Ikar hiskalilus shemitzad Kalim, the Ikar hiskalilus from the containers is not only, let's just read the first line, Ein ze levad shebechol achas yeh ma'amida ha'hofchi, it's not only that every emotion should have something from the opposite emotion, but that the hiskalilus should be in such a way. Let's get the English word for hiskalilus. We called it interconnectivity, inter-inclusion. Well, technically, hiskalilus means that when you have integration is fine, but what hiskalilus really means is, like for example, an artist has a palette, different colors, where before he gets onto the canvas, the colors are different. They're absolutely different. Then they get in the palette, then he puts them on. Then when they actually start working with each other, and you can't even see the difference, it becomes one picture. That's real hiskalilus.
That's
the
end game, isn't it? That's unity.
I would not call hiskalilus simulation.
That's when you make the ferret.
That's when red and purple create a different color.
That's when you make the ferret.
That's the last stage.
That's Iker.
Well, break it down into levels. I'm not really sure, but bottom line is, when you look at a painting or a picture, so if you cut up that picture in pieces and so the pieces, they have no clue. You put them together, suddenly one thing made a collage of many, but the many are completely bottled because they all understand that they need each other. That's real hiskalilus. It's very much how nature works. That it's constant, everything helps each other. Like he's going to say. However, in that itself, in chapter 260, he spoke more how each midah needs the other. That's why and here he goes into the full integration.
Integration is a good word.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So one second. So he says, so it's not just that every midah has the other one in it, not just chesed as gvura and gvura as chesed, but let's read. Kim shati eskaz be'ev kazeh sheikablu kol asfira zeh mezeh. So that's the distinction. That's why I don't think it's really two levels. If I ask me, I think it's two steps in understanding what real hiskalilus is. Step one is that Gvura understands that.
Here's why I can't say inclusion. I'll tell you just throw this why I like inter-inclusion. Inclusion, one's inside the other. But inter-inclusion, not only the inside.
And assimilate, and also assimilate in English means when something is more of a verb. It's not, hiskalilus is a noun. Hiskalilus is a state of being. Assimilation or inclusion is really more of a verb. It's the process, how it happens.
Inclusion is a noun.
Okay, right. Okay, no, inclusion is a noun, right.
But I'm just saying, descriptively anyway, inclusion, one inside the other, they're included. But inter-included means not only that, but they're getting from each other.
You could also say interconnectivity.
Yeah, integration.
Interconnectivity is another good word. Network, a real network is a real hiskalilus.
It's called integration.
No, integration has other meanings. That's why integration.
What?
Integration. Integration when you absorb something. Like, and I would use integration much more for achdus than anything. When integrate, when elikus is integrated, divine is integrated into the midas. I mean, remember, the semantics, to make a final word is not a final word. One word in Hebrew can have 5 in English to explain it. So there's nothing wrong. It's fine, it's good. I like a lot of words, frankly. Because if you look at other Maimorim, you'll see there's a Maimorim from the Rebbe Rashab where he explains hiskalilus in 5 different ways. And each one has another word, because hiskalilus itself means a lot of things. Here, it's in context, that's why it's not conclusive here. I mean, this is one, here it's in context of not hiskalilus. Let's put it this way. You're dealing with separate units that first begin to sit with each other. I mean, best example is arbitration. There's nothing like mediation. It's a perfect example. Right? Next to each other. And they can listen. Meaning that they both are not going to just yell. So there's that. Step 2 is that they understand that each one needs the other. Like, for example, Gvura needs chesed, chesed needs gvura, and then he says here, amnam ikr. The ikr hiskalilus is when they all understand, all of them know that they have to work with each other. Sheikabel kol asfira zeh mizeh. But that's not possible if chesed doesn't know that it needs gvura and gvura needs chesed. So it's a progression. So in this chapter, one second, he summarizes basically. In this chapter, he gives the example of Evrei HaAdam, the organs, the limbs of the body. Where here, in a human body, you don't say you're made up of 1,000,000 parts or 1,000,000,000,000 parts. You are one entity where everything works with everything. Just look when a person walks in the street. Why don't you slip on your feet? You know? Or how eye and hand coordination, or any type of coordination. See, hiskalilus, another aspect of hiskalilus is coordination, true coordination, where many parts, like for example, when building a team, when you have a team or an army, whatever, of hundreds. See, there the word fusion is more like for chemical, for physical things. The human interconnectivity is more of a team, a real team effort where there is there's words. Synergy is another word that comes from hiskalilus.
Coordination.
Yeah, coordination. That's the word. So coordination, right? So synergy is like what happens when you actually they all really work. That the end result. But it's and so the example he gives you like hilach beregel, like you're walking. So when you walk, you need your arms to help you walk. So like just walking itself, how many parts of the body? And let's not get all the doctors now yelling and screaming here. How many parts of the body are functioning?
No, he was quiet. When we learned it, he had no problem whatsoever. The only time he agreed with everything.
Okay. So bottom line is that this chapter 261, he explains at length the full dynamic of hiskalilus, how it works, and he gives all the examples of the body and how one part of the body can help heal the other parts of the body. Here we use the word example of bleeding.
Reflexology.
Reflexology. Yeah.
Okay.
And bottom line is that the body is symbiosis is another. Yeah. That there is a symbiotic relationship. It means everything needs everything. It's a machine that doesn't have anything extra. It doesn't have anything missing. And in the most fantastic way, you know, when you start thinking about the nerve system and all that, it's like everything is so interconnected. If one thing missing, the whole thing is affected, etc., etc. So that's a real hiskalilus. Whereas in chapter 260, bottom line, but in training someone, you can't begin by telling the two people in mediation, hey, you're like one. They don't get that. You're really working with each other. First, I have to explain to them, listen, you know, you were partners once. This guy is better at this guy is better. You both need each other. So basically, again, we're talking about the interface. When you train two entities that are at odds with each other, or two intense energy, first you have to weaken them. Secondly, you have to explain that each one has something the other doesn't have, and you need each other. And then comes the stage where it becomes like it's one big machine, where everything is like, for it to really work efficiently, everything needs everything. For it to breathe, like a human body, every part is necessary, or else the whole thing doesn't work. That's essentially Perek Reish Samach Aleph. Anyway, the bottom line here is that this is the ultimate kelim de tekun. Talks about Avram, how Ava needed Yira, etc. So anyway, okay, I'm just going to read quickly the end here on page 530. And this is hiskalilus. This hiskalilus is the ultimate completion of it all. Ultimate tachlis hashlemus, which is the ultimate. Shlemus is what? Shlemus is ultimate. This
is a whole chapter on its own.
Yeah.
This little piece.
Yeah. In other words, when something is pashut, when something doesn't have details, it's just an amorphous. An amorphous, but it's not the word simplicity. He means something that has no. No. It's like a chemer without a tzura. It's a raw body. Yeah, it's a raw. Well, he says toyu. It's a raw body without shape and form. Like think of it as a clump of clay before it's been shaped. Midas the Tayu, Midas HaChesed Ein Bez HaShlemus Mepnei She'en B'Chinas HaGvura L'Yesh Keich Pashut, because it's Pashut. It's the pure form of it. I think in chemistry there's the alloys when they talk about the by the way, a lot of words with scholars in chemistry is full of, the chemistry is all about that. The alloy, where you take different elements and they turn them into compounds, right? Compounds and stuff like that.
Is bigger than the sum of its parts.
Right, that's exactly. A compound is a chemical word for hiskalilus. So okay, fine. Okay, I'm going to go through this. You learned this. So hiskalilus. The bottom line is that it's like one thing, one entity. No part of the detail of the entity can be complete without all other parts, without others. And only when they're complete, they're all together. Nishlam kol echad v'echad. Each one becomes complete in its pula. I'm reading the last line of the chapter. In other words,
go back and just read that a second.
I skipped that because
Okay, say it. Okay, no
it's
problem.
intentional.
Yeah, it's a whole chapter on its own. Okay.
Yeah, it's the idea of that potential state. For example, you think that let's say our potential abilities. So each of us has the ability to write an idea. That ability, as we know, exists in the nefesh. It's a potential. In the potential state, it's much more powerful than it is when it comes out. Because it needs a tzimtzum, it needs a diminishing for it to actually come into your fingers. But there, it's a keich pasha, it's keich, it's not poel. It's a potential. So potential state is like, relatively like tehu. Its potentiality, on one hand, is where everything begins, but on the other hand, there can be true interconnectivity there. Because everything is the potential of what it is. It's only when it comes into this is all in the beginning of the hemshech he spoke about.
The pearl for its
In other words, hiskalilus in a body, the keichus of a neshama, the real hiskalilus happens in the body, paradoxically, not in the neshama. Because the neshama dominates, and there's no real distinctions. Remember, in the beginling of the hemshech, all in the beginning, you spoke about that in detail. That when it comes into the kalim, that's when you have the real hiskalilus. The real point in this chapter is not only to explain what hiskalilus is, but also that the kalim are critical. Because without the kalim, the containers, you don't really have. The eiros themselves are too much. Bottom line, they're still too abstract to have a true, what we were calling here, interconnectivity, inter-inclusion, or all the different words we used. I'm trying to think of a good example for it. And he brings examples at the beginning of the hemshech, for sure. One of them, for sure, is art. Because in other words, or a musician. A musician may have the whole composition in his head, but then it has to come into someone else to hear music. You need musical notes, and you need an orchestra. So potentially, you'd think in his head, it's much more achdus, much more hiskalilus, because it's all there as one. But it's all there as one as a theory. It's only an abstract. There's no music. It has to come into the details of the orchestra, where they technically can actually create chaos. And then you can create the beauty of a real composition. So hiskalilus is that's the beauty. Hiskalilus is not just a whole bunch of things working together. It's working together in a very tangible way where there's potential for them not to work with each other. That's that. The Rebbe brings us very much. Now I realize this is mamish the nekuda of chesed gvura teferes. When you say, for example, Nisan is chesed, lamayla lamata. Iyar is eimer sviras eimer mamat lamayla gvura. And Teferes, Matan Teir is Teferes, where you have both together. Or the Rebbe brings many times, you know the concept of day 1, day 2, day 3. The day 1 it says Yem Echad, because there was nothing in the world but godliness. In the first day of creation. Day 2 was the creation of Machlekes, of division. That's why it doesn't say Ki Teiv. Because even though the purpose of it is unity, but on that day there was a division. And therefore it created the potential for all chaos and war. Day 1, there's no potential for anything. When you hear light, there's no potential. It's like Lifnei had tzimtzum in a way. So day 2 is the tzimtzum, like the gvura, that creates a separation. As soon as there's separation, that you and I are two entities, we can potentially be at war with each other. And day 3 comes Yem shehuchbo b'kitev, because it says, in other words, shalom is not the absence of war. Shalom is a new entity, peace. Where, like we say every in the morning, Bar Kosav Hashlishi, the third pasuk that we talk about mediation, right? So mediation, at the end of it, when the two work together, it's much greater when they were two separate parts and they didn't fight with each other.
But that's the part.
So the beauty of it is that you have to have, in a way, Tayu before Tikkun. You need to have that. You need to have a whole. That's why it says Seisur Amanas Livnis, that he breaks it in order to repair it. You need to have two entities. Because technically, you said Akudim or an Ak, there's also no Shviras HaKelim. But the problem is everything is in an amorphous state. There's no orchestra. There's no distinction. It's all one. Of course, so of course there's unity, but that's not real unity. The unity that you want is that there's different forces and they realize that they're really part of one. It's basically harmony within diversity. Is the ultimate.
That's shlemus.
Yeah, that's real harmony. Harmony is an excellent word also, because it's a harmony. Harmony is never. No, as beautiful as one color may be. Chesed is blue or white, whatever. Gvura is red. As beautiful as a color can be, real beauty is never one thing. One musical note is not beauty. A lot played again and again becomes monotonous. The beauty is the diversity in the right order, and then it becomes a complete unified form. That's beauty. You see a beautiful face. It's not one feature. It's some combination. There's another word I was going to say. Not collage. You just mentioned. There's not confusion. There's not fusion.
Configuration?
No, there's confusion. The confluence.
Confluence of things.
Yeah. Okay, we've developed a lot of words here.
Simon, could you
See, this is the terms that we'll develop
Simon, could you explain?
because it's.
Could you explain about how the last part fits into the muscle or the example that he brings from Avraham and Yitzchak that I don't understand. How's that unity? Because it's really
Because without the Gvura, without the Yira, you didn't know this Ava is not complete. Ati Yadaiti.
the way you're saying it now, that there's like a collage, they both work together. And over here, it seemed like.
Well, he says, Chenu gam b'shnei havchim. Two havchim. Chesed and Gvura, two opposites.
Right.
Kishmekablim zeh mezeh, hu d'shleimus hachesed lo yedei Gvura davke. And he says, example, Chesed and Gvura on their own is opposites. Love and awe. Okay? Like the Avad Avram, Eyavi. Avram is Eyavi, he's a love. Shanishlam adei Nisayin is davke.
Right.
Nisayin is Gvura. That's the bottom line. Why did Avram need Nisayin? He loved God. Because without being challenged,
You wouldn't know it.
it wouldn't be complete. Not just you wouldn't know it. He says, the innocence who ina Gvura, ubafrad ben Nisayin makeder, because Mamish Gvura, that he controlled his emotions. But kol zem it's an avashasem the b'chol inyan meilav does bechin avad vekus. You see the depth of his ava when he's challenged. If he was never challenged, you could say, the Gvura brought out the depth of his ava. That's basically what he's saying.
And how do you know?
He says, "Kamei hameisa nafshe."
Unless you challenge it.
One second.
It's complete.
No, I understand.
No, but here, kamei hameisa nafshe. Not everything has to be everything. There's different details in this chapter. When a person is Meisa Nefesh, gives his life, for someone he loves, Mesiris Nefesh is not, is right. And if he's not ready to, his love is not complete. In other words, if he's not ready to do Gvura, to help the Ava, then it's a conditional Ava.
He considers himself separate.
It's
whatever. You see what they're
anyway, that's Gvur Mashlim is Chesed. Here it's Mashlim. Here it's about one completing the other, one complementing the other. That's hiskalilus. I'll just say one more thing that in that.
I don't want to sound too controversial, but
One second.
I think the Jews going to the gas chambers, it doesn't make sense. Not just the way they went. They stay dort and they sing Animami. Because it's Ave. At the end of the day, it's Ave. That's the problem. I think the Jews on the way to the gas chamber. It doesn't make sense. Because at the end of the day, it's Ave. It's Ave for the Eibishter. It's coming through a terrible thing right now. It's only part of completing the Ave.
And okay, I understand now why he also brings the Poshet, because he wants to say the importance of the Kalim here. The importance of the Kalim is critical here. Because you see, the Eidos of Tayu that don't tolerate each other are fixed by the fact that now they're tolerating each other. It's only when the Kalim of Tikkun, Because you could argue, you know what? Just for argument's sake, you could say that the main chiddush of tikkun over teyu is that teyu is eris merubim, intense energy, and tikkun is not such intense energy, and that's why. But that's equivalent to bringing them into the room. That's all you have. But you want to have that they actually love each other and work with each other, and they need each other as a one symbiotic whole, harmony. So that requires the kelim. So it's like going down. That brings you back to the Achdus. Like we said, it has to come into real pieces, real separate Akudis. You see, that's where you have Akudim is 10 energies in one Keli. Nakudim is 10 energies in 10 Kelim, but they're too intense. And they all, on all levels. They don't tolerate each other, they don't give and take from each other. And in Tikkun, it's 10 energies in 10 Kelim, but they're all mamish fusion.
That's right, that's said.
Yeah.
You're right.
No, I'm just translating what I'm reading. It's almost like this. You want to think about it? It's like a child in its mother's womb is like a kudim. A child when it's born, the first years when it's still has tantrums and emotions is the kudim, so the shvidas hakelim. Not in technical sense, but and adulthood as it develops in Ibr Unika Meichen. Maybe that's even Ibr Unika. Ibr would be a kudim.
Yeah, Ibr is in the womb. Unika is the beginning.
And Meichen would be hiskalilus where you have that. And that never. So if Ibr Unika Meichen is kudim, the kudim brudim, that would be very sweet. See, right now when you have the realization, the epiphany, that's hiskalilus, because a lot of details suddenly, and it's a whole. That's it. You smile. You say, that's what it is. But you can't go into But you can't get that from just saying I have the hergish without going through. You have to get the confusion first. There's no way to get it without the confusion.
But the other thing
that's the beauty
the
of
other
it.
thing is also
There's no way. That's it.
Simon, the other thing is from what we learned from this muscle, these 3 levels, that it's not a state, it's a continuum. You're always getting better and better at it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you don't arrive at tikkun.
I think there's even a word from one of the Rabbeim that said like a guy was living a little as a hefkedik. So he told the Rebbe, he said that he went already through his teyu. So the Rebbe said to him, "Dein teyu is mine. Dein tikkun is mine teyu." Like that, one of those.
Wow.
In other words, everything is relative.
Right.
For one person's tikkun, it's still the other person
Right.
is still doing.
You get to then a boy in the bin, and you get another stage, another.
The truth is, I must say this, that I remember learning Chassidus in the beginning with Rabbi. He used to tell me that he doesn't understand how Teyu and Tikkun, why you really need it. Because if you have Eir and Keli and Tzimtzum, you don't understand why Teyu and Tikkun.
Why was that?
What? I missed you. What did you say?
He said the statuses of things by him. He's always Teyu and Tikkun. He said he never got why you really need it. You have the same components in other states of hiskalilus, because they say that Isaac Humler, he wrote the Shnei Me'eris, he wrote a whole bunch of books. He was a chassid from the Tzemach Tzedek, the Alter Rebbe. So Isaac Humler builds the whole chassidus on Teyu and Tikkun, and which means that everything is understood in Teyu and Tikkun. The truth is, later chassidim by the Rebbe Rashav, they built much more on Eir and Keli, or Tzimtzum and Eir. But the truth is, when you read this, you realize that it's the same thing really on a different level. See, the Teyu, I understood it. I told you the first. I think a while back when we spoke. Teyu is really the market correction. That's explaining that corrects the tzimtzum, the distortion that came out of the tzimtzum.
Distortion came
called
out
it a market correction. Yeah.
He thinks the market correction is tikkun.
No. I'll tell you why.
The market went down from the bubble.
Once the tzimtzum happened, which really was necessary because it allowed the Metzius for us, independent reality, to emerge. But somewhere there's a distortion, because now Eined Movade is no longer dominant. So Teyu is like the protest, is like the demonstrators who are coming to demonstrate and say something's wrong with the system. Tikkun is the correction, but Teyu is the wake up call that tells you the system isn't working.
The rattling of the...
I think it's an unbelievable way of looking at it.
Because
Teyu is saying, why in Teyu, why can't they get along, Eretz and Kelim? The Fnei Tzimtzum, they get along, because it's all one there, because there's too much concealment of the energy, of God. So therefore the energy now has become a force of its own, and it's not feeling bittul. etc., etc. So basically, market corrections don't begin when the correction happens. Market corrections begin when the depression happens. You understand?
That's Aesop. Aesop is
Right. You understand? The market correction begins when things fall apart.
Italy's falling apart. Right. So Italy's falling apart.
Okay, so let's learn Perek Reish Samach Beis. 262. Yeah, it's a short Perek, but he completes.
Exactly.
It actually is ending. He's ending a subsection in this whole thing, which I'll sum up in a moment.
Friday.
For Eidzeis, and now he's adding. And now he's adding another dimension. After he explained in this whole Maimer, in chapter 259, he explained how it weakens it, and there's Eze hiskalilus. In chapter 260, he began the discussion of hiskalilus, the idea that each midah, each emotion needs the other. In chapter 261, he explained the full picture of hiskalilus. It's the Kalim, where they all become one full entity, one harmonic confluence, convergence. You know?
Yeah, very much.
The Eidzeis, and now he's adding a final step in this hiskalilus. So in the last perek, he explained hiskalilus leads to unity. It's not just they all work together to a point that they're all part of one entity. What you sense is oneness, not parts. When something is really working in harmony, you sense the oneness, not the parts. So he says now, this oneness can be two stages. You can say it's one, but you still see parts. And he's saying, no, it's one, we can't tell the difference between Reish, V'Seif, Klal. There's no difference between the head and the end, from the beginning to end. It's so one that that it becomes complete oneness. Because since they receive from one another, since they're all receiving from each other, there's no higher and there's no lower, there's no hierarchy. It's the harmony of decentralization. That's
this is one of the pictures that you put.
right. Okay, but we're sitting and learning the Shas Maisa. It's market correction.
Agendas.
I didn't see you in the streets watching that. So it's very disappointing. So you're talking like that. If this is such a big Indian, you should have been there.
I could study the picture later. Don't worry, they airbrush a few individuals out once in a while.
Did you airbrushed? I was there.
No, they never airbrush me. They airbrush in some people too. Today they say you can't trust pictures anymore. Stalin was a master at that. There's a book called Stalin's Pictures. You ever see it?
No.
You got to see this.
I just printed it now. There's a magazine called Zaman. It comes out of it. Has a whole article about the
Oh yeah, okay. Stalin. So a book called Stalin's Pictures. How you see how the same portrait. How like the year later is one guy is missing. 2 years later, two guys are missing. Then the end there's a big famous portrait of Stalin, and Stalin is here like a Schmeckel and Lenin, and like maybe 30 people. As the years go, it's only him and Lenin left, and then they got them together. It's like ridiculous.
Without Photoshop.
Yeah, whatever they had. My father told me when he would go when he was in Russia, so in Soviet Union, so they were forced to go to public school, a few hours a day. So he says every day another picture was missing because they love pictures. They love parades and pictures. You know, every day was another picture missing, and you're not allowed to ask what happened. Stalin was particularly cruel. What he would do is, if he called you up and said, not you, but Stalin says, we're sending you on a free vacation to Paris for a month, you and your wife. That was the preparation. That when you come back, he did it with. You couldn't. You had to come back because your whole family was being held hostage. Yeah. Anyway. So since they all receive from one another, there's no Elyon, there's no Tachten Klal. Because the Elyon is receiving from the Tachten. And the head is receiving from the leg. So once it's receiving, who says it's the head? Who says that's the leg? Like when you heal the head through the leg. That's the sign that tells you that there's something from the regel in the head, or else how could it heal it? So today would be the equivalent of taking, let's say, a piece of like grafting skin. Would be an example. I mean, they don't do bleeding. They don't do bleeding. Acupuncture. What about nerves?
Yeah, there's acupuncture.
And the body generally will not reject its own, even if it's from a different part of the body completely, right?
No, you're saying about surgery. You're talking about simply manipulating the leg.
Fine.
You fix the head.
But is there any truth to today, is there any medical truth to the concept of hakazus adam, bleeding?
They reject it.
Right.
I thought they accepted it.
They did accept it?
I thought they didn't.
Well, doctor, what do you say?
Bankers. You mean bankers?
No.
Hakazus adam, I think so.
There's something.
It's bankers?
We have to take
He said, spoke about in the last chapter.
But
Not
acupuncture.
because they did.
There are certain diseases
Yeah,
like
but acupuncture
arthritis.
has the same
They're taking out
effect.
blood somewhere. They bleed. It's called bleeding. You bleed part of the body and
Bankers, you know,
There's
Yeah,
better ways
yeah,
to
yeah.
do it, but
Yeah.
They still do that.
No, but I think acupuncture is the same way because you're basically putting pain in a certain area.
Okay.
To drive blood.
Shakaponim.
it's not much to do with the pain acupuncture necessarily.
This part I definitely understand more Baruchnis. But anyway, v'chein keich hahiluch, and also, for example, the keich hiluch,
Basics.
the walking, when you walk, the power to walk. Shamash lemesareish, v'mashamelech esim memokim lemokim. The fact that the walking completes the head because it takes it from one place to the other. You have to explain what that means. It means when you want something, your head wants something, it's coming from the head. The only way to get it is through the leg. It's just showing an element of this symbiosis of the working together. That you need each other. So there comes a point where there's no difference because you just need to get there. So the gam haregel meisif eir v'chayis ba'reish, and the regel, the leg, also adds energy and life to the head. The kumei sheish meis elef regel raglei am asher nichi b'kirbei, like it says by Moshe.
What does that mean?
It means 600,000 raglei ha'am.
No, I'm saying, what do you mean the regular?
I'll explain this. He means beruchnis here, of course. It means that the Rebbe or Melech, ein Melech b'lo yam, ein Melech b'lo yam, basically. Anechi b'kirbei, he says that 600,000 legs of the nation are within me. Asher anechi b'kirbei, or I'm with him, in him. U'kamei tzedakah, he's just giving examples. U'kamei tzedakah, shebchinas ma'isa, but when you give tzedakah, which is only an action, it makes your mind and heart much more refined.
Right. It's a very mundane thing.
Right. Even though it's an action, it makes the mind and heart, which are not ma'isa, more refined. And the Rebbe brings from the Samach Tzedek, that's not a guzma, it's kipshute. That means literally. That the Rebbe said that elef pamim kocha, it says 1,000 times. The Rebbe says that means from 1 hour of learning with tzedakah you can achieve what another person needs 1,000 hours of learning.
Also mean you can learn with somebody else. That's my
That's even more.
So you really take away from your time of learning. So the Rebbe said, "Nasa libe, might really be able to learn." So you don't need as much time to learn because you do my tzedakah.
U'kamei kola emer ein li ala teira, afila teira ein li. Like anyone who says, I have only teira, so even teira he doesn't have. You have to have teira and gemilas chasadim. Kim sarich li is tefillah gam. Okay, here it says tefillah. Sometimes it says gemilas chasadim. In other words, it's not that you're just missing the other thing. The teira is also compromised if you don't have the tefillah. U'kamei rabba das. Look, it's all a bunch of examples. He's going from gashmis to ruchnius, obviously, to show. U'kamei rabba da asik b'teira chai mem shnin v'abayid asik b'teira v'gemar chai samach shnin. Like it says, Rabbi, who was Asik, who studied Torah, he lived 40 years. And Abaye, who was Asik in Torah and Gemilas Chasadim, lived 60 years. So it actually added life to him. And so, who shegmach mashlim esatera. See, first he said Tefillah, now he says Gemilas Chasadim. Because sometimes it says that. That means Gemilas Chasadim actually was mashlim es Torah. And then it kumoi tamchen daraisa, like those that support Torah. Sheyesh b'em eid yisrin maila. They have even an additional advantage. Like the Torah, like Zvulun Yisachar, Zvulun was the business people, Yisachar are the scholars. So the Torah is Magdim Zvulun. Zvulun comes first. And then it says Yisachar B'Elecha. First, Smach Zvulun, that Zvulun should be happy in B'Elecha. Why first? Because Zvulun adds something to the Torah of Yisachar that Yisachar doesn't have. Harish HaSeif, who adar Abba B'chinis Rosh. So we see from this that when the head is receiving from the leg or the might, whatever, all the different ways of receiving, hasafu adra b'chinas rosh. The sav becomes rosh. The zvulun is first, when in truth he's last in the hierarchy. Even though he's a makabel, the Sof becomes the Rosh. Because the Makabel is giving back to the Mashpia more than the Mashpia has on his own. V'hainu, she'iskalus ve'sachdus yibchinis achdus gemura. So now he's saying that the hiskalilus and this achdus, the interconnectivity, hiskalilus really is also interface at the end of the day. But here he's within itself, within its own structure. Ve'sachdus, it's achdus gemura. That's what he wants to conclude. You know what the power of this is? That you're not. Remember, we talked about the interface between the divine and the universe, and it begins that people are separate, and the emotions don't let them work together. And now the emotions tolerate each other. Then they begin to appreciate each other. Then they begin to work with each other. Then they become one. They become one, just like Achdus of Elikus. So you basically brought the divine, Moichin, trained through all the stages, ultimately trained and developed and refined the emotions that they become mamish one. Ad mebli asher yimtze reish v'seif, to the point you cannot find and see like a circle. Where's the beginning and where's the end? A perfect circle. What's the top? What's the bottom? There is no top and no bottom, because it's all one complete. But it's the chiddush here. It didn't begin as a circle. It began as details. It began as particles, and it became a wave.
How does it an interface, though?
So you were thinking about that, right? Particles and wave.
No, but no, I wasn't. How is it an interface? You just mentioned.
No, because the interface means that the midas that were first yes, you and I are and we can't even communicate with each other. Now become so one. Mamish like Achdus. There's no more. There's no distinctions even. It's such a complete circle. So it's not just hiskalilus we're working together. In other words, interface. No, but it's the interface that a world that is so separate by egos can become so united without being annihilated. We're not talking about the annihilation of the individuality. We're talking about the individuality is intact, and remember the ultimate goal, as we're going to learn, is that it's going to get back the intensity of Tayu. Oh. Now it's still been weakened in order to set the stage, but it will go back once you cooperative. That's Losad Lavi. Okay. Now the point is the Achdus is a key word, because Achdus is Elikus. How do you have Achdus? Because the bottom line, interface is the finite and the infinite. It's diversity and unity. How does unity and diversity ever become one? And the answer is you see in existence. You see the unbelievable hiskalilus that we see in a diverse universe. It's not a one. We're not clones. We're not one dimension. We're multidimensional, and it can work as one. That's why it's critical. So you have that's why it's really the fundamental interface. So in other words, Chochem and Meichin, no pun intended, is brilliant in this process. It's a keli for the bittul of Elikus, so that weakens it, and then it goes and trains it to work with each other.
Even environmentalists realize that also. They realize that if you process a can over here in New York, it's going to help somebody face
like the butterfly effect. Yeah.
They realize that there's a unity that that we have to. A nice here helps somebody else there. It doesn't make sense.
I just thought of two examples I heard. One I heard from that Ronnie Perlman came once to the Rebbe. It's like after davening, he stood at the side downstairs in 770. He had Aleph Nissen to give the Rebbe a happy birthday. It was the earlier years he had given $1 for every Jew. And the Rebbe told him right away it was spent and he's ready for the next installment. I don't think he got an next installment, but he was standing downstairs, and the Rebbe walked by and greeted him. He gave him a happy birthday, and the Rebbe continued. But then the Rebbe, many often, turned back and called him over, and he said to him, I think about you all the time.
All the time,
wow. Listen, why? Because since you gave $1 for every Jew, and I think about every Jew, so I think about you. In other words, in addition that the Rebbe thinks about him as an individual because he did something for every Jew. And then remind me, Saul Duchman said by the Rebbe, who told me this yesterday? By dollars, about his son or whatever, he said that his son wasn't here many years. He came with his son to the dollars. So the Rebbe said, Halavai, will getracht wegen mir, wie viel ich trage wegen them. Yeah.
Say that again.
Halavai, he should think about me as often as I think about him. So now the reason I'm saying it is because you say in Neshama Klolis, even though on the Neshama level, the Rebbe includes everybody. But the real beauty is when we get together on our own, and then you bring the Rebbe's Achdus, which is the tragedy of Machlekes. Because in other words, within the Rebbe's mind, and it's all one. But that's like a chechus. That's not a chiddush. That's like akudim or ak, whatever. The challenge is to bring it into when we actually are separate limbs, and do you work together?
Separate functions.
Right. That's what the Rebbe said. As Achdus of Chassidim will lead us to Mashiach. That's what the Tzemach Tzedek said. 100 years Tzemach Tzedek's Yotzeit that verbringen at Pesach. Tzemach Tzedek's Yotzeit is Yud Gimel Nissen. He was born out of Rosh Hashanah. Yud Gimel Nissen. So the Rebbe said then that Tzemach Tzedek was thinking of going to Israel, or whatever, or to stop being Rebbe or something like that. So the Rebbe, so the Chassidim asked, "What's going to be?" She says, "The Dodi Kinder," and the Yeshayim and or the Achdus from Chassidim will feel Kegem Mashiach. That the unity, and the Rebbe talked about the unity part then, the Arichas, that. So it's all relevant.
By the way, it also has to come from the matzah.
Yeah, there's no way around.
Not
Has to come in Kalim, not in Eidus.
Right, the Kalim have to. You start using it. Exactly. You have to start using
Like so, in other words, when someone says, "I'll be at peace with you," but only if you agree with me. That's not the Kalim. That's Okay, so Kamei Kain. Okay, so this is Miblishen. So you can't see the difference between head and foot because the foot, the bottom is giving to the top. So once the okay. The Kamoikin who are dugma lamayla besas is the tikkun. So all this that he just said is a dugma, is an example of lamayla, how it is with lamayla above. In the 10 spheres of tikkun, the imay yesem adreges chalukes, even though they're separate levels, harihei mashpiyim umekablim zemezeh. Remember the key, how much he elaborated them with Toyu. That's not just they don't mashpiyah, they don't want to be mekabel, they don't want to be mashpiyah. They just don't want to give and they don't want to take. Midas daim. They all want to just. So here they're mashpiyah mekabel zemezeh. She'ein shleimus le'echad b'lei zulasa. Because one is not complete without the other. So it's not a chesed they're doing. It's not they're doing chesed, I have a lot, I'll share with you. You're not complete without the other. Kim davke b'iskalus kulam hu yashleimus shalehem. Only the iskalus of kulam, and they're all to work iskalus of all of them together, that's when they're complete. U'kamei b'adam atachten kanal. Like it is in the Adam HaTachten, like we see in the human body, all the limbs and all the parts. V'noz tchilason b'seifon, v'seifon b'tchilason. And the beginning is wedged in the end, and the end is wedged in the beginning.
He's wrapping up 30 pages.
Yeah.
No Reish Koftes.
Ad mebliya sheyimtze reish v'seif. And he says again, to the point that you don't see the difference between, you can't find the beginning and you can't find the end. You can't see beginning and beginning. Can you imagine his hiskalilus?
I'm sorry. 70 pages.
Yeah, exactly.
We started Reish Koftes, page Tov
Shema?
Hine closing,
Yeah.
Tov Samagdalet. 464 he started. Now we're 531. He's wrapping up.
70 pages, yeah.
One concept.
V'zeu al yedei kalim dafke, and this is, and not just it's in the kalim, it's dafke through the kalim. Dafke through their diversity. Because the energies on their own are separate levels. So chesed and gvura and teferes in the nefesh are separate. You remember we learned this. They're one only because they're not defined. So they're in an amorphous state. They're in a like you said, poshut. Only when they come in mislapshus, they manifest in the kelim nasim and miskalos be'efin kazeh. Do they get such a level of integration? What's interlocution? Interlocution? No, that's a different word. No.
But they're not. They are pushed and not pushed when they're in the neshama.
Well, they become achdus. In the neshama, they are pashat.
They are pushed. So they're
Yeah.
not separate. They're not.
No, they're separate. But I think only in the beginning of the Hemshchi talks about that. They're separate because they're chachma bina das, but they're both pashat. Yeah. There's a whole pedic about that, if I recall. And this is not from the meichen. He means not from the meichen as tam v'seichel, as bina. In other words, it's not because of a reason and seichel. Remember going back? This is back to the interface. Because if it's from the meichen, then we're back to square one in a way, like we're not connecting to lakus. So it's coming from the Eira Elyon, Shazali de bitl b'chinas era elyon is the bitl of the higher energy. And b'chinas atzmas ein sof shalamayla mayla b'chinas chochma. This is a real interface language here. So it's coming through the meichen. V'hu b'chinas shema milagav. That's the shema from within. Milagav means within, milabar means without in Aramaic. This is the shamala she'esha hiskalilus. That's he said. Is back all the way. What page?
Resh Chof Tes.
Resh Chof Tes, right. On page 464. That this is shema that is an atzilus, Adam Elyon, that creates she'esha hiskalilus, that creates this hiskalilus, this interconnection. It's not from the air sheder that rests and hovers. That's only a reflection. This is from the etzem, the essence of shema. As we will explain, he's setting the stage for the next. So, what's the stage of the next? I'll read to the end of the mimer already. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's he setting the stage for? Avram, just hear this before you run, because it's very negeya. He's now going to go next. This is a break. It ends a section, a subsection, but then he goes to stage 2 of Shema. Now he's going back. In Shema, there's an etzem of Shema and the ha'ara of Shema. So he wants to say that this is now the etzem of Shema. Shema ma is bitl chochma koyach ma. So the etzem of koyach ma is going to be meichus tema. And there's the order of Koyach Ma, which is more a lower level. And he's going to go into the whole discussion. It's a little Kabbalistic that the etzem of is the Shema is called the Shema HaChodash HaYetzim Mitzcha Da'ak. He's going to go into a whole discussion. Listen to this. Hey, he's going to go into a whole discussion of the new Shema that comes from the Metzach, from the temple, the forehead. Metzach is forehead or temple?
Metzach is the
yeah. Forehead, but isn't that the same name as temple? This is the temple. So Metzach is the forehead of Ak, and right, the Shem Sag. And he's going to say that Shem Sag, which is Tayu, is the Havolim, are like the ventricles of the ears and the nose, the orifices, and Shem and Shema is from the Metzach. Explain a whole arichas of how the shine on a person's face is the Chochmah. It reflects the etzem of wisdom, and it's going to the distinction between that and how the etzem goes through speech.
Rabbi used to look at people's spell.
Well, Pianal Yuva Mashakosa Bek V'Yedei Hashem, V'Yedei Hashem. According to above, we'll understand what it says. Bek V'Yedei Hashem, the Pasha Kerach. Bek, when it will come the morning, right? That's it. This was Moshe's words that after the simon that they made with Shkedim, whose rod is going to grow. So we'll come in the morning, we'll know who Hashem chose. Who's the Kaddish, who's the holy ones, who should be the Kohen, who should be the Levim. And whatever is chose, that will be Makriv, he'll bring. So Amalei Moshe Gvulas Chalak HaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'elamei. The Medrash says, Moshe said to Korach that Hashem created the Gvulas, he separated the world in boundaries. The idea of separation, that's the content of what we're speaking about here. And that's what it says in the beginning. This is the Medrash Rabbah. And that's what it says, Vahi Erev Vahi Beker. Remember we talked about day 1, day 2, that the Eibishter said evening should be morning. Vayavdel Elokim ben Er ben Acheshach. Vayavdel ben Er ben Acheshach. The Eibishter separated between light and dark. So you see, he created a world of boundaries. Basically a diverse world, where everything has its place and its time. Let me just go back. In the beginning of the Maimer, the Medrash continues and says, so just like the Eibishter separated the Gvulas, made boundaries and divisions in the world, the same way, between night and darkness, he also separated between Yisrael and the nations, and also separated between Shevet Levi and all the tribe of Levi, the Levites and all the tribes. And Aaron he separated to be the high priest, working to serve in the Holy of Holies. And just like you cannot break the separation, just like you cannot eliminate the separation between dark and light, you can't eliminate the separation between these tribes and between Aaron. So that Rebbe Rashab asked at the beginning of the Maimon, what's the connection of the separation of dark and light to the Machlekes of Kerach, who challenged the Kahuna? You have to say it with some answer. What's the connection to one another?
What's Moshe answering?
And why does he bring the difference between Jews and the nations? It's only relevant here is the Levim. He didn't challenge that. He challenged that's the questions.
All the nations are challenging that every day.
Yeah, what does that do with Korach?
Okay, so now he's answering all this. So he's saying, Eid v'cheshech in the Medrash. The Medrash says the difference between light and dark, the difference that, in other words, Hashem, God made a separation. That's Teyu and Tikkun. This is a proof. When it says, let there be light, that's the Masein, that's the work of the Tzaddikim, righteous. And darkness refers to the actions of the wicked. And he separated between the light. When he said he separated, because he separated the light because he separated for it's himself. Din hanyale. This is what he has hanoah from. These. He wants tzaddikim. So he separated between darkness and light, between Toyu and Tikkun, because to tell us he wants Tikkun, he wants tzaddikim. And just as he separated dark and light, he also separated between, this is explaining the Medrash, between Israel and Ma'umis, between Israel and the nations. The Yisrael, v'akum shneim, all of machshava.
Nice, huh?
Both.
Yisrael v'akum shneim,
Yeah.
all of machshava.
Yeah, both Jews and the nations of the world, both arose in God's mind. Rakzebe primius, this was in the inner dimension, Zebe chitzein, this is in the outer dimension. The tachlis hakavana b'neshamas Yisrael dafti. The ultimate kavana is neshamas Yisrael. For Eimer, and then he says, "Shehivdel ben ha'er l'cheshek sh'letashmish sh'leilam." Then leilu teyabar el l'shavas yitzara. Why did he separate between light and dark? L'tashmish sh'leilam, that it should function in the world. It should be a service in the world. 1 second. It should be its function. And leilu teyabar, because it says leilu teyabar. He didn't create the world for chaos, el l'shavas yitzara, but to civilize it, to settle and civilize it. So you see, the kavanah is vayav. Why did he separate the light? Because he wants light. He wants tikkun, not toyu. The same thing is why he separated Jews from the nations, is also for the purpose of for benefit in the world, for a utilitarian function. The preservation of the world is for Neshamis Yisrael. Ukamaymer.
The whole world is a prop for Jews.
No. The Kimel Al Yedei Neshamis Yisrael. My mistake. The preservation of the world is through Neshamis Yisrael, through the souls of Israel. Ukamaymer Tanai Hitna Kodesh Baruch Hu b'Ma'aseh Bereshis. Like it says in Medrash, the Eibishter made a condition when he created Ma'aseh Bereshis. The condition is that the Eden will receive Torah, and they will, in other words, preserve the world through Torah. But Proteus, and in detail, Yesh Kan Gimel Havdalas. When you break it down, there are 3 different separations in these boundaries. Echad Shehivdlas Yisrael. The first one is the separation of Israel from the nations. Vu Abchiru B'chinas HaTikun, V'hainu Arasim B'chinas HaBitl. That's the choice for Tikkun, repair, and the will for Bitl.
That's Yisrael.
That's Yisrael. That's the first level of. That's the first Avdallah.
Chira and Tikkun.
Yeah. The second, yeah.
What did you say?
Chira and Tikkun.
Yeah.
And Bittul. Chira, Tikkun and Bittul. That's
Yeah. V'zeu kolosiyin hatikun shehu b'chinas habitl. Because that's the kolosiyin of tikkun. What's the kolos meaning? What's the general purpose of the world of tikkun of repair? That's bitl. V'hu inyan tikkun ha'ershi b'chinas chlishas litin makim. It's the tikkun, the repair of the energy, that it should be weakened in order to give space for one another. V'zeu gamke meshabacha b'Yisrael. And that's the same content as choosing Israel. Like it says, in you Hashem chose. He chose you because of the bittul that you have, because of your selflessness. It says on the Jewish nation, you are the fewest of nations. Ma'at, shmamayitin atzman. They diminish themselves. Mamayitin, from diminish, chalishis. So that's bittul. That's the first separation. So the first boundary is the concept of the will for...
Neshamas at this point, though. You're not talking about guf, right?
No, neshamas begufim.
Because the body...
He's talking about, no, neshamas, he doesn't mean neshamas alone. Neshamas begufim.
But the whole thing about...
In Tanya, Bona B'chat, it says the guf.
No, but
But he's talking in general, the bechira and
we learned that...
Yeah, I know, it says in Tanya.
There's no reason...
Right, but here's not going into that. Here's just the bechira and Jews as a whole.
Oh, that's why he asked you if it was
Yeah.
Shama level.
Sham and guf, both together. Habez Havdalah the Shevet Levi. The second separation is a distinction of separation of the tribe of Levi. Fu'inyan Havdalah Shashvotim. That's the separation of the tribes. If you do it, Yud Beis Shvatim and Yud Beis Gvuli Alachsonim. The 12 Shvatim are the 12 sides of a square. 12 sides is not Alachson, the 12 angles. When you take a square and you there's the 4, and then you make an X inside. It's a 12, so it adds up to be 4, 8, and then there's inner Amek and Geva, depth and height.
12 corners.
12 corners is the right word, right? Alachson, sorry, yeah. The 12 corners, the 12 boundaries of the corners of any square. Vein Shisha Midas, they are the 6 Midas. Komesha Miskalim Zeim Zeh, that's why it's 12, it's 6 times 2. They're the 6 Midas, the Miskalim Zeim Zeh. Right?
There's 12 corners. We
Yeah.
make the X and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a box. It's a box. It's not an X. It's a box.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both sides has 4.
It's front, back,
Each side has 4.
It's a box. This way.
A cube.
Cube.
Like
Every
this,
corner is another.
like this. It's a cube. Like this.
Let's see, you drop. That's up.
Right.
Here we have a box. Here we
We
have
have
a
a
box.
box right there. Every side has 4.
Right.
And there's 4
Yeah, but,
sides.
yeah.
So it has 3.
No, that's
No,
16.
No,
Then
That'll
we
be
get
16.
I'm
That's
trying
not
to
14.
figure it out.
No, there's
No,
front,
no, no,
back.
no.
It's the corner. It's this. It's you're counting these lines. These lines.
Oh,
you're
these
counting.
lines.
This line. This line. This line. This line.
Right,
Only this
right.
corner. It's not the corner.
The line.
Lines, oxen.
The line. The lines. The fold. Where it changes side.
Right. 4,
Right,
4,
right.
and then 4 this way.
Right.
So count to 12, let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
4
Okay.
on the bottom.
And then 4 on the bottom.
And then these
And then
four.
1,
1,
2, 3, 4.
There's
That's
4
It's
lines.
3D. It's 3D.
If you want to make a
Wow.
cube, you need 12 lines.
It's
Yeah.
3D in 4 sides. 3D.
Right.
So it's 3-dimensional. That's why we have 3 dimensions.
12 lines.
Yeah, that's what it is. A cube.
It's a cube.
12
3D.
line makes a cube or whatever.
Okay, so the 12 lines that make a cube are 6 times 2, are the Shisha Midas. Kamesha Miskalim Zem Zeh. Kamei Mizrachis Remis, Umarovis Tachtis. Kamesha Kosa B'Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah breaks it down. Now, what do you have? Like Mizrachis Remis.
It's Dreim.
It's supposed to be Dreimis.
Sure, it's a mistake.
Yeah. Mizrachis Remis.
Inside Roin.
So Mizrachis Dreimis would be
Otherwise, it's gotta
would be
Dreimis.
Mizrachis Dreimis would be east north, east south. So it's a southeast, the southeastern side. Umarovis Tachtis would be the western bottom, the west bottom side. Kameshikosa b'Sefer Yetzirah, like he explains in Sefer Yetzirah. So the Yud Beis Shvatim is the structure of existence of the cube. V'hainu hiskalilus sheyeh.
Where would the Midas be represented on here? I don't know. I can't
It's
follow that.
interesting about that. The top sukkah.
The sides? Is that the sides? The Midas would be one, the 6 sides.
Yeah, 6 sides, and then it's doubled. I mean, I have to look it up exactly what it says in Sefer Yetzirah, but v'hainu hiskalilus sheyeh chesed kol ha'megvura v'gura ma'chesed. So we see from this the Yud Beis Shvatim represent the hiskalilus of chesed kol ha'megvura. That's like you have Yisachar and Zvulun. Understand? So we see from this that the Shvatim represent the interconnectivity of the hiskalilus of the emotions. Chesed from Gvura and Gvura of Chesed.
It all starts.
That's the second boundary. Vagimel, and the third boundary, Havdalah, the third separation, who Havdalah's Aaron, Diksiv Gabei, V'yilvu Alecha V'yashasucha. The third Havdalah is Aaron is separated even from Shevet Levi. So you have the nation, Israel from the nations. That's what he said, Tayu, Tikkun from Tayu, the Bechira in Tikkun and Bittel. The second is the Havdalah of the Yud B'Yud Gul, the hiskalilus. In other words, the first one is to leave room for each other. The second one is hiskalilus of the midas, and the third is going to be the achdus, I guess.
But it's not
So this is
it's all the 12 from each other, or just Levi from the other.
No, all of each other. They all are
All of each other.
hiskalilus.
So why did he mention Levi? Why didn't you just say they were all,
Because Levi stands out from all of them.
Okay.
Yes. He doesn't explain why.
Okay.
Service. What is serving? Sherus. When you say they serve, that's the in of helping, supporting, and that's hiskalilus, that everything helps and supports each other. Lias mekablim zemezeh. So the point, because that's Levi, that's Aaron. Aaron's role is to help and support and create that they should all receive from one another. Shezeu tachlis hashlemus shemesayin zeh lezeh. That's the ultimate. Shlemus, 1 second.
The act of one midas joining another midas is actually.
So the act of support, of serving, that they should all receive from one another. Zeh tachlis hashlemus shemesayin zeh. That's the ultimate complete picture, that they all help one another. Let's continue. Let's see. Never it says v'yalavu alecha, separate him for you, Hashem, for God. The main primary one was Aaron, and the Levites were just secondary to him. They were yeah. The betikun ikar b'chinas chesed, because in tikkun the main force is chesed.
Right.
V'yidezehu hiskalilus the tikkun. And through that comes the hiskalilus of tikkun, chesed, love. The gvura b'derech klal b'chinas hischalkus, because gvura on its own is generally separates. V'in hiskalilus ma chesed, and chesed, love, is united, because gvura separates.
Right.
Discipline, it breaks things down, and chesed is is the uniting force. L'china ikir hu Aaron. And that's why the main person, the primary one, is Aaron, and the Levim are secondary to him. To help, support, and to create hiskalilus into connectivity. 1 second. And this was Moshe's answer. Now we'll understand Moshe's answer to Keirach al Tainose. Because remember, the question was, how does this answer as Keirach? Why do we need to know all the things about dark and light and about Israel and nations? What was the answer to Keirach on his argument? Vayikach Keirach Targum Unkelus, Targum Unkelus is Vispali Keirach. When it says Vayikach took, it says Vayikach Keirach, they took the men with him. What them took? So he says Vispalik, he separated himself. He confronted Moshe by separating Skalik, he separated. Shadotza Bischalkus Upirud. Keirach wanted to separate and to divide. It was divisive force. Keirach was Teyu. Before Meraglim were Teyu. Remember in the last Perek? When he spoke about Vayas Kislev. Huh? Meraglim. No, last Maimer before. In the previous Maimer.
I didn't hear you up.
Yeah, because the previous Maimer, it was Kolov, and through Moshe's Kayach Ma, that created Bittul, the Vayas. Okay, so.
He wanted everybody to be socialist.
Okay.
And ultimately, that's the divisive force.
That's why he wanted that Gvura should dominate, because he wanted separation. That's why Moshe answered him, Gvulas Cholak HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Moshe answered him, the Eibishter made boundaries. The Eibishter separated boundaries. He separated between light and dark. Shivdila la'atzmei. Shabocha b'tikun dafka. And Moshe was telling Keirach, you're wrong. The Eibishter separated light and darkness, and he separated for himself because he chose tikkun. So not Valkena ikur aron b'chinas chesed. You want to separate. You want to create divisive. The goal of the interfaith, the goal is to create unity. Hiskalilus, tafka tikkun he wants.
The goal is taken.
Valkena ikur hu aron b'chinas chesed. That's why the main leader, the primary leader, is aron, is the level of chesed. V'zeh boker v'yadeya Hashem es ashaloi hainu es asher hivdu. What?
Baker v'yeda Hashem.
Baker.
That's the answer of Meshach to Perah.
Yeah, Baker v'yeda Hashem es ashaloi hainu es asher hivdu la'atzmei. That's what he'll know. What he separated from himself. That's why he says Baker. The pashtus in the pasuk is in the morning we'll see which grew. But Baker knows that the morning Yidei Hashem. What did he separate from himself? Hivdul Atzmei, he separated from himself light, the morning and light, tikkun, bittul. And v'inyan es hashel shalei, v'es hakodesh yeshlem es b'chinas primi v'es makif. The pasuk says es shalei v'es hakodesh. Why does it say twice? It should have said that he'll know what is his, what belongs to him, to the Eibishter, and v'es hakodesh, and what's holy. What's the difference between es shalei and kodesh? He says that's primi and makif yeshlem. The Ashalei b'chinas erakav b'chlal. Ashalei is the erakav, is the light of the ray of light, of the energy, the kav, the thread of light that comes after the tzimtzum. Like we learned somewhere, like it says elsewhere, when it says in the pasuk by Noach, as kashti, my rainbow, I placed in the cloud as a siman, as a bris, as the Chris's bris, the promise. So what it means, kashti dover hamukashli, something that is comparable to me, something that is like a hekish, something that is comparable to me, something that is close to me. Shubchinas hakav. That's what it says elsewhere. The first Maimer Samavavi says this also. Dover am the end of the first Maimer. Zeu es hashalei. Ves hakodesh shubchinas era sever shekadosh shemuvdel. And Kodesh is the era sever shekadosh shemuvdel. In other words, there's two elements in Aaron. Book of Yudeya, that Videya Ashashalei, the primi of Aaron, and then the makif of Aaron, I guess. The kolzo who v'hikrivei love.
Because the pasuk goes, Boki Veda Hashem Ashashalei, v'sakodesh v'yikrei love, v'sakodesh v'yikrei love, v'eis asher yivchar b'yakrivei love.
Yeah. The kolzo who v'hikrivei love kvar ay vebiru d'shemam al ma'il lamata. And this is v'hikrivei love, that this is a love kvar. Through the bird of Shema or Ma'il Lamata. Or Mashakosab es Asher Yivcher Bo Yakrive Lov Yesh Leimer, what it says at the end. And the one he chose, he will be the one that brings. Yesh Leimer Shebchins HaBerurim D'Tayah Shemavara Mamata L'Mayla. Okay, so because the V'Hikrive Lov, so V'Hikrive Lov is Mamayla Lamata, the Shema that Aaron does from above down. And sheyiv chalei yikra v'lov, rakir v'lov. That's from bottom up. There's mevared tei. No, there's mevared the machlekes, the gvura of kerach. U'kamay inyan hakarbona shem birurim de teyu. Like karbonis, that's the birurim, that's the refinements of teyu. Shalzeh amar asher yivcha boy v'yakriv lashon lahaba. That was kfar, and that's lahaba. That's what's coming. That's the karbonis that he's going to bring. So there's one part of the pasuk he's talking about. Boker v'yadeya es Hashem Shaloi.
Look. Pasuk goes like this. Boker v'yeda es Hashem Shaloi, v'es hakodesh v'hikrivei lov. V'hikrivei. Then v'es asher yivchar b'y yakrivei lov. Okay. So tight trace now. What does that mean?
That's that Boker v'yadeya is that the Yidei Shaloi hainu shel hivdul atzmei, that he will, that which he chose for himself, which is light, Boker, morning. That is the kav. The kav and the primier makif, that he chose already, that he chose tikkun and bittul over tayu. In other words, chesed over gvura, and therefore Aaron over keira, not like keira chshita. Okay, fine. And that's okay. They're both premium. That's all, and that's vehikriv. That's all through that's the bird of Shema. That's tikkun and bittul, momay lamata, and then from that you'll know what will be the future. Asher yivchalei b'yakriv v'lov, that he will from. So he's the one. In other words, first he chose tikkun, then he chose him that this tikkun should then be mevarer teyu mamat lamayla. So it's like two things that happening from here on, right? That gives them the kayach exactly to mivara matlamet. Kumayna kvar shem berudim sheyuch beyakru lo shno. Zet tzarich lis idea kain beginnus hatikun dafke. That's the word, and that dafke is with the kain tikun. Behind the kayach choshev the mitzad meilas hateyu shekodem el hatikum harizayikar. Kayach thought because the advantage and because of the superiority of kayach teyu it should come first. Because it precedes tikkun, it should be the ikar.
And Moshe Rabbeinu let him know.
But Amalei she'ena kain told him it's not that way, my friend. The be'emes sarach li is bidurim d'teyu. It's true, there needs to be bidurim d'teyu. V'yesh b'em yisun er. It's true that they need to be the bidur of teyu. But and needs to have the and they have an advantage in their energy. I was they tikkun dafke, but it's dafke through tikkun, dafke through Aaron, dafke through the kehanim, to the kohen. And this is the meaning. That which he chose. Huh? What did I say? Okay. That means the gvulas chalak HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibush established gvulas boundaries, and he surrounded boundaries, and he chose dafka tikkun. And bitl b'chlal. This is the Bechira in Neshamas Yisrael, the choice. The choice that there should be scholars, they should be kol, they should inter-inclusive. They should also receive from one another. That's the complete shlemus, that's the completion. And the second evidence is that he's chosen, and who he has chosen, that he should in the future be makrif, bring closer, is the berurim, the karbonis, the berurim, the refinements that come through Toyu, hu yisrin, that brings an advantage. Aval gamzet tzarich lis al tikkun dafke.
The tikkun of Moshe Rabbeinu didn't work too well at Kairach. He was unsuccessful, apparently. Doesn't always work, in other words.
Temporarily.
Yeah.
Oh, it worked. We know from there on, we know that who's who.
Yeah, we know who's who because he Kairach didn't pass the test. He could be changed by Moshe.
No, that was not the point. The point was that the message got across. He didn't cooperate. That's his problem. It's like, okay, hold on a second. See, here he adds the element of how tikkun, in the Maimer itself, before he didn't speak about tikkun, repairs tohu. Just talked about the two stages.
Mm-hmm. He spells it out in the Alpiyana.
So tikkun actually also repairs
I want
tohu.
to say something. I want more comments over
It repairs tohu. 1 second, a bit addition. 1 second. Also, the last Maimer by Shlach, V'yirashnu. Also, the in other words.
This thing that you said before. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're interrupting.
No, I'm sorry. I just want to correct it because we said about Kamei Mizrachi's Remus. That's a mistake.
I don't think it's a
not
mistake.
It's Remus.
The Reim, right?
It's
Reim
Reim,
Elyon and Reim Tachten, right?
Right.
That's what I said as a joke. I thought maybe it's...
No. I remember now. I don't in what's it called? In Rabbina. It's very clear there. Remus is the highest part. The world. That's why the sun shines from the Mizrach and goes down to the Ma'ariv, and it goes down.
He's right because they would have fixed it. I realized afterwards also. You're right.
So
correction for the recording here.
No, Remus Tachti is the Ma'ariv is the lowest level.
Right. He's right. Reim and Tachten. Emek Reim, Emek Tachten.
He's going through all the levels. The 12
So
levels.
Mizrach means the eastern
is one,
eastern top,
and Mizrach the bottom,
and western bottom.
Ma'ariv is the bottom at the end. So from all the 12.
Sifri Tziri, he spells out exactly
Goes
what
like this way, right, left, right, center, down, up, down, and back.
It's obvious.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a learned in Rabbina. It's very interesting.
Okay, so let's do the Kitzur V'Oid. In addition to hiskalilus, Oid Shehu Mebliya Sheyimtzu Reish V'Seiv, we're doing the Kitzur in the middle of page 532. The Oid, this hiskalilus, this interconnectivity in Tikkun, is to the point that you can't tell the difference between the head and the bottom. The Elyon Mekabel Ma'atachten, because above, that which is above receives from that which is below. Like tzedakah, charity makes the mind and the heart refined. Teira v'tfilah v'gemach, Teira and Tefillah and Gemach. The Teira needs Tefillah and Gemach. If not, Teira is not complete. Tamchen Daraisa, Zvul and Yisachar, that the supporters of Teira, they precede even Zvul and comes even before Yisachar. This is all Tikkun, the hiskalilus, that they all work together and they receive from one another. V'zeo Boker.
Boiker v'yoida.
Boiker. I say Boker, I keep saying.
Yeah. Boiker v'yoida.
Boiker. Not Boker as in there.
Yeah.
Right. Boiker v'yoida. Hashem gvulis os HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That the Eibishter made boundaries. He established boundaries. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Habchira bi Yisrael, the choice in Yisrael. Hu habchira betikun mitzad habitl shein achlishus. The choice in Yisrael is the bechira and tikkun, the bitl that causes the chlishus, the weakness of the midas. Habchira b'levi hiskalilus ahofchim diyud be'shvatim. Here he's summing it even mamish, even better. Bechira and Levi is this. This he didn't mamish say inside. Is this hiskalilus ahofchim? Not just they tolerate one another, bitl and weakening. But it's actually the hiskalilus, the interconnectivity of the opposites of the shvatim, which is chesed gvura, like we said, the six midas. And abchira ba'aron liyas v'yilovu elecha hiskalilus shemekabim zemezeh. It's all the way hiskalilus that the higher level of hiskalilus that he said, not just that they, not that's the basically peirik reish samach. Sorry, peirik reish nun tes is. The Shamish saw the bittul chlishus. It's at the eir. Perik reish samach is the bittul, the hiskalilus that comes. The gvura knows that there's a chesed in it. The chesed knows there's a gvura. That's the shvatim. Levi from the shvatim, which Levi pales. B'chira b'Levi that causes the hiskalilus of the hafchim of the Yud Beis shvatim. And the b'chira and Aaron is the third, is the next two prakim where hiskalilus that they've all become like one. They merge as one force. That is Rilav Elach Hiskalilus Shebekablim Zemezeh. That they that's how he distinguishes. Not just hiskalilus that one has the other within it, but they actually receive from one another. That's the addition in that Perek. Not just that they have include each other, but they actually receive from one another, which ultimately creates a total achdus. By ikar betikun chesed ze'in aron. The ikar is tikun, the chesed that's aron. So that adds something which I did not pick up.
Aaron the peacemaker.
What did you just pick up? The what? Huh?
Aaron's the peacemaker.
Remember you mentioned in the beginning, I told you wait, you mentioned it at the end?
One second. No, what I picked up here is like this. We learned that the first thing was they tolerate one another. The second is, that's like, as he calls, Eze hiskalilus. Eza hiskalilus. The second in Perek 260 is that there's really hiskalilus.
Inyan.
Right, Inyan hiskalilus, that they all, each one knows that the other one is inside of him. Chesed needs gvura. And in Ikar hiskalilus is when they receive from one another. And they actually work with one another. Not just Chesed knows I need gvura within me to be complete. But they actually,
Chesed without gvura.
but then they actually work with each other, and that's the three havdalas. The first is creates the bitla and the chlishus. That's why in Shamas Yisrael is a ikar. That leaves. That's why you need all three.
You need the havdalas in order to have
That's why you need all three for his answer to
You
Kerach.
need the havdalas in order to have this
Because Kerach said Tayu is ikar. So he's telling me, no, Midas Tayu is not ikar. That's taka. The bitter is there, but you need number one the chlishus. Shamas Yisrael. Number two, the hiskalilus. He's telling him that everyone is included, the Levim, and then number three, you need the Achdus, the Bekalm Zemezeh, and this, and I tell you, that also happens through Tikkun. So with that, we conclude this Maimer of Kerach, Tofrei Shayin Daled, page 532, the conclusion of chapter 262, and then, as I said, begins another subsection of the explanation of Ma. What he's going to do here is going to go into now a whole difference between the etzem, there's the etzem of Shema, and there's the ha'ara of Shema.
So milagav is what?
The etzem of Shema.
What we have till now.
Tikkun.
So till now was the etzem of Shema.
He's going to explain now why it's the etzem. Because it's from the
But
Metzach.
it was till now was the etzem of Shema.
Yeah, but
And later it's going to be what?
No, now he's going to explain why it's the etzem. What is the etzem? What does it mean, the etzem of Shema? if you see,
Next couple,
if you know, for example, you
about
see,
foreheads,
foreheads and ears and noses.
orifices, and
Right. You see, when he starts, like, for example, look at the bottom of page Tov Kolam. I'll just read. After he starts the beginning of this Maimer, he says he's going to make a real summary between Toyu and Tikkun. The two differences between what we said, that they tolerate one another, they don't tolerate one another. And he said that's mitzad air, that's mitzad kelim. And the Tikkun, there was the repair of both of them. So now he's going to say v'chol ina Tikkun and Tikkun ha'eres v'hein Tikkun ha'kelim. Everything happens to Shem Ma HaChodesh HaYetzem Mitzcha Da'ak. Okay, so we sum up, and that's it. We close up this session. Yes.
Kaya.
Thank you.